Hello, good people. By now, you know the deal. If the camera angle is off, it's not by design. I am blind and it comes with the territory. If I could, if I had the resources, I would give you all a genuine hip hop breakdown. But alas, you just have to listen to me break down as best as I can the most interesting 11 minutes that I've watched of a political speech in a short while. And I say a short while because there's always a lot happening in politics in South Africa and globally. And we know as well that in the past few months, a great deal has happened. So, in terms of local events, I think the Advocate Sikhakhane book launch was quite impressive as an event. When I say so, I was not there. I was not invited. I'm not an A-lister, but apparently Ufaro naye bangekho. But of course, that's no doubt through his own decisions. Sorry, I won't continue on Faro jokes for now. Look, the event was quite impressive on the basis of bringing together a myriad of people, diverse people in terms of their politics. And amazingly enough, black people who were part of this event, right, are people from different political formations in some instances. I mean, apparently, Konabo SG, Floyd Nico, Shivambula Payana, there was former Premier and Minister Tokyo Sexwale. That was a surprise for me. And there was also the current Premier of Gauteng. He's in big trouble for attending that event. Aglalo Tuli House. They don't play like that. You can't do black events when it comes to Tuli House. They don't like that. So I think Gauteng will be without a premier pretty soon. If Fopa Figile Mbalula has his way after seeing that event. So, look, in terms of the people, you can read something into that, right? And it's mainly that there seems to be a social push, a conscious effort made to say, put our differences aside. Yeah, we don't agree on A, B, and C, and we may continue not to agree on these points. That said, are we able to be civil? Are we able to approach a matter with a common purpose? That remains to be answered. And I think that was the most telling thing, because you had many other people there, right? People who haven't even been in the spotlight in terms of politics for a while. I'm thinking about former Minister Geraldine Fraser, right? She was also there. So, yeah. But look, the reason why I'm making this video is because, yeah, Jigga was there. The one and only former President Jacob Zuma. Apparently it was a guest appearance. I don't know whether it was a guest appearance. Some of these things seem choreographed. And maybe it wasn't, but either way, I think it just worked how they played it, right? So to give a bit of context, Advocate Sikhakhane, for those who don't know, he's a prominent advocate in South Africa, and he often takes up cases of high-profile individuals. And the more political these individuals are, and the more controversial, quote unquote, these individuals may be, and quite often these are black individuals, then yeah, he gets slammed, right? It's a feast when it comes to Advocate Sikhakhane. I'm surprised that people don't really talk about that. It's often in relation to Advocate Mpofu that this is said. And Advocate Mpofu, there was a moment in history. I know that some people can't think beyond what they ate for breakfast. But 5-6 years ago, Advocate Mpofu was the most loved advocate, the people's advocate, right? And for a section of South African society, it would be said that, yeah, no, he's actually serving the establishment, right? That's a debate for another day. But I'm just making this comparison because Advocate Sikhakhane has had it rough. Personally, I think this is one of my favorite lawyers in South Africa. I just love this man. I love the way he thinks. I like the way he conducts himself, the way he communicates his ideas, his tone, his posture. He's a gentleman, but he's also a soldier, you can tell, right? He's a man amongst men, truly speaking, right? Like, he's a thinker. And I think that is what I appreciate most about Advocate Sikhakhane, and I'm not ashamed to say so. Take me to task for it. So anyway, he wrote this book. It's a memoir. And the book essentially speaks about his strife and things that he had to come across as a lawyer representing various high-profile individuals, and his career and his thoughts on various issues and so on and so forth, right? It's about his life story. Odyssey of a Rebel. I haven't read it. I hope to read it. Maybe they'll make a Braille copy, especially for me. Please, if you're watching this and, you feel pity for me, maybe you can get in a word for me, or even do something better for me. Please ask the good advocate if I can help him put that book into audio. I'll do a stellar job. Promise. Anyway, so this book is out and it's already doing good sales, right? It's topped and become a bestseller in some instances, some shops and so on and so forth. And in this event, President Zuma apparently rocks up. And as is custom in big events, particularly in African culture, what happens is that makufika umuntu omdala, an honorary guest even in some instances, expected or unexpected, you got to give them a word, right? You interrupt the program even if that's what it takes for them to have a word. So this then meant that the program had to change a little bit, right? The MC then says, no, I'm going to allow the author to introduce President Zuma. And I'm giving you this context because it's important in terms of what's going to happen. And hence I almost feel that this was choreographed to an extent. Anyway, Ubaba Sikhakhane uyangena, and he basically says, no, I wasn't meant to talk. But this is what stands out for me. And then this is the part that I think is quite important in his speech, is that I'm about to introduce the man that basically got me into a lot of trouble. Right? I'm experiencing grief because of this man. Right? I'm not liked because of this man. I'm hated because of this man. It's bananas how it is, because it's people from all over my profession that just seem to have an issue with me doing my job. And it's all because of this man. Right? Think of the title of the book, Odyssey of a Rebel. Cool. He sets it up. And then in comes President Zuma for 11 minutes. I was counting it. Well, I also looked at the clip. But he comes. And it's a very low-key speech that President Zuma delivers. It seems unrecited. By and large, it seems as though it's from the top of the dome. And it's measured, it's considerate. But when you actually listen to it and you consider what he says and its themes, you realize that, oh, there's a message in this. And the message, at face value, sure, may be that read the book. Of course, he says this even towards the end of the speech. But actually, it's about him also highlighting the fact that he's a rebel. And this is foregrounded by Advocate Sikhakhane, right? Telling us that this man has put me in trouble for all his deeds. So I think we're all quite aware of all the cases and ongoing cases, and according to the man, more cases that are to come that President Zuma is actually experiencing and going through, and so on and so forth. So that then becomes the subliminal take of the speech, overarching theme, right? Read the book, and then I'm also a rebel. And look at how President Zuma starts this speech, right? He greets, he knows very well that there are big names in this room, in this gathering. He knows. And he's like, I'm not going to mention all these names. I'm not going to mention all of you. Not because of pride. He wasn't saying it because of that. But, it's like, I don't want to leave anyone out. As if he would leave anyone out of importance. Right? And then he does something quite benign. He's like, I'm just going to say hi. Right? What is he doing there? Easing them up. The audience, but he's also making himself relatable, because that's what he's heard young people say, right? He even twangs it a little bit, as we say in South Africa. Hi, you get what I'm saying? It's like, that's how y'all do it, so let me also be with the in crowd. Hi. Easy, disarming, right? And the crowd laughs. And then he starts saying a name. And he says the name again and again. And he says, you don't want me to talk about your problems. Who's the name? Or who's the person? It's former Minister Tokyo Sexwale. Right? So he's already said he's not going to mention names, but he goes on to mention a name. And he hints at the first part of the speech, as he opens his speech, that, my man, I've got your files. Watch it. And I think, and maybe people who can see can correct me here, there was some body language or facial expression or interaction that was happening between the two of them, right? Where Mr. Sexwale was perhaps just trying to engage him in some type of way. So he drops that, President Zuma, right? First point. Then he takes it further. He goes on to say, no, sure, I'm told that this gentleman, now he's referring to Advocate Sikhakhane, has written a book. But hey, guys, mina angikwazi ukufunda, mina angikwazi nokubhala. I can't read and I can't write. What does that tell us? Right? It's basically bringing back into the fore some of the criticism and some of the nasty things that have been said by his naysayers, right? That he's an illiterate. And he does this, why? Because it's like, I'm a fool, but it's this fool that has so far started a political party that has contested you, my naysayers. B, I have overcome so far all that my political opponents have thrown at me. C, I'm in this gathering and I'm being given an opportunity to talk. And look at all these people that have gathered to see someone who represents me and who has represented me before launch a book. So much for me being an illiterate. All these smart people, intellectual people have gathered here to break bread with me, dumb as I may be. And then, of course, after that remark, he gets into the meat of his speech, right? And he starts saying why this book is important. And essentially he's talking about the armed struggle, apartheid days. And he says, no, we are the only country, and this needs to be checked, to have started a struggle, reached the end of it almost, but never completed it. And he talks about, which was a very poignant thing to say, about all these people, good people, who spent decades in jail, prison. Some have even died. And what was an important trait for him as President Zuma when it comes to these people is that they loved humanity. That's all. They loved humanity. And I say it's poignant because you instantly, when you hear this, are forced to think to yourself, yo, okay, is it still so when it comes to what's happening in society in South Africa? But more importantly, you also then think about, oh, you are in this gathering. Is this also about humanity? And then, is it also humane to have treated Advocate Sikhakhane in the manner in which he has been treated? Several strands or thoughts come from that aspect. Classically, he stops midpoint while he gives the meat of the speech. And what does he do? It's like, hey, someone can't even give an old man like me some water, right? I believe a young lady goes and then gives him a bottle of water. He takes a break and he drinks a little bit, and he does it slowly. And then he starts interacting with this young lady. He's like, don't fear. Like, I'm an old man. I drink slowly, right? Then he drinks again. And then he's like, calls Tokyo again, right? Calls Tokyo again. This is now Mr. Sexwale, basically saying, remember that incident that happened, right? And then he drops it. Second shots fired. Minor, not important. And then he tells the young lady, don't be surprised at me drinking every so often. I just get thirsty. I'm an old man. And then he says, I'm not sick though. I'm still fresh. Another moment, right? To ponder on. Now, there have been several stories about him being unwell, looking out of shape, and some of these points have been supposedly argued in court, right? In relation to his cases. But more importantly, in terms of discussions in political forums and threads on various social media, it's been like this old man, right? Kwafaru, particularly of late, that has been their narrative, right? Less so than Gwakoko, to be honest. He'll die soon, essentially, right? And he's like, nah. Essentially, that's what he responds to. And he's like, I'm fresh. What does it mean? I still have energy. I can fight on. I can do this. Right? And then he completes his story, essentially saying, the meat, at least, of the speech, essentially saying that, no, like, a lot remains to be done. Especially in terms of the economy. We have not attained that. And this then takes me back to a point that he made before, just shortly after greeting, when he thanks Advocate Sikhakhane for the opportunity to speak. And that is to say, Advocate Sikhakhane is his lawyer. In fact, he's got many lawyers. And he will get more lawyers because he's still going to get into more trouble. Right? And that is such a gangster thing to say in a speech like that, right? Because he's firing a shot at all his naysayers. Consider all that I've said so far, right? And he's essentially saying, this is not over. And with the I'm still fresh comment, it's basically saying, I can still fight on. I've got this energy. Bring it on. And it's also yet another way of being relatable to young people. Whether you and I and others like it or not, This type of commentary and way of speaking is impressionable. This is what young black men, particularly in the hood, come across all the time. It's like you're always fighting against the legal system. You're always viewed as a wrongdoer. And this is something that he says. He says, I am a wrongdoer, President Zuma. And these type of messages are relatable. For the right reasons or wrong reasons, they just are. And in popular culture, if you are seen as someone who's a troublemaker, fighting quote unquote against the system, then it endears you to the people. Because it's like, well, at least you can do it, and you've got the means to do it. Think about in hip hop, for example. Hence, I think of this as a breakdown of that sort, right? Then he drops the file on Mr. Sikhakhane. And he talks about this incident when Mr. Sikhakhane was traveling and was found at the border of South Africa and Kingdom of Eswatini, which used to be called Swaziland back then. And they were being stopped by the police. Remember now, Mr. Sikhakhane at the time used to, be one of those African National Congress people who used to go to exile and so on and so forth. And he's like, nah, I can't be held up by these cops because they came across a roadblock supposedly. And he had something. President Zuma doesn't want to tell us what he had in his bag, right? Because he says he doesn't want to criminalize him. And he gets stopped. They get stopped as a group by a black cop and a white cop. And he's like, no, I don't want to be taken to prison. This is Mr. Sikhakhane. And then his fellow travelers then tell him, oh, well, supposedly use this thing. And then as they get stopped, he opens his bag, drops this thing, and this cop then jumps in fear and screams and screams and screams. And that's how Mr. Sikhakhane runs away. Not a big story, but important enough, right? It's a very subtle way of saying, I know what you used to get involved in. I know your role in the struggle. I know what you've played. It's not a threat. But most importantly, it's not the key thing that he wanted to tell him. Now, to the casual listener, it may be like, oh, okay, that's the file. The file actually comes towards the very end of the speech, when he calls him again a couple of times. And he says, I didn't know that you're still around. I thought you live in England. But then he goes further. And he says, I hear that you've written something in this book as well. I'm going to read it because I want to see whether you are still that Tokyo Sexwale I used to know, or whether you've changed. Because I know that you and others, after a while, you go on and changing. And that was the message. The message is essentially about not changing, but selling out, right? Some of y'all have deserted the struggle, and you have not stayed true to the struggle. And when you think about Tokyo Sexwale, he is known as a business mogul, right? He's made money. He was a entrepreneur at some point in time. He's got his investment. He was serving on boards of businesses and so on and so forth. So that image already gets you thinking of others who are part of the struggle, who live that lifestyle, but who have sold out. What do you think of those 11 minutes? There's a lot more, but these were my key takeaways from that speech. Do you agree or disagree?
The thinking behind it all. 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 The thinking behind it all.